Yes.
Hello, this is Shelly, Terrell. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know where you are and what you're doing?
Okay. I'm Shelly. Nice to be here. And I'm currently in Athens, but I've been living in Germany for the last 3 years. And what I do, the reason I do this is because I'm an English language teacher, but I'm also the vice president of educator outreach for Parentella and a social media consultant.
So, I've been interested in your work on personal learning networks. It seems to be something that you're enthusiastic about. Can you tell us, first of all, let's start with what is a personal learning network?
Okay, there's many things you can call a personal learning network. First of all, I usually redefine it a little bit. I like to call it my passionate learning network. And the reason for this is because a learning network, and it doesn't have to be educators. Mine consists of mainly educators, but it consists of all the people that you choose when you're online to connect with and learn from. This can be either through blogs or through Twitter, Facebook, anywhere where you can interact, you can get information. And the best thing is you get to choose how you want that information. If you want it through videos, webinars, maybe you just like podcasts, or you want to be in forums. You want to respond, and then they respond back to you. But that's basically what it is. It's a community where you participate and others participate, and the learning happens together.
So, if you're going to make that explanation to students, what would you tell them in terms of what is this thing that you're asking them to create?
Okay, I like to do a little activity where I ask students to look at the person next to them and to ask the people next to them, their classmates, a question. Okay, so think of one question, any question. It could be, where's the Taj Mahal? Okay, and when they ask the person next to them, which is their friend, and they learn from them throughout the year, and they're next to them usually because they're sitting in desks next to each other, they find that sometimes their question isn't answered. So then I usually ask the same student, okay, so imagine asking the entire class, let's see who knows where the Taj Mahal is. Usually someone will have an answer. And if they don't, well, then that's where I say, okay, well, there are two things you can do. You could go to Google and you can search and you can get a million hits on the Taj Mahal. Or you can ask somebody that you have previously connected with online and they can tell you right away, your answer is just like that. But there are other more difficult questions, or let's say, for example, a student wants to be an engineer. Instead of reading about being an engineer, instead of reading about biographies and things like that, they can actually ask questions from an engineer. And the engineer will be able to give them expert advice or experience when doing a project and things like that.
So, imagine that you are a teacher and you want to introduce personal learning networks into your classroom, and you need to explain to your principal why is this now important. Um, it's not a term that traditionally you've heard applied to the curriculum, and there's only so many hours in the school day. Why is it important to get students involved with building personal or passionate learning networks?
I like to usually show. I think showing is a much better way of approaching things. So usually I tend to do this by Skype. I'll ask somebody on my personal learning network. I'll say, okay, well, and show some evidence. For example, I do projects with students, and this very much actually describes my situation and my director. In the beginning, my director didn't know what personal learning networks were, passionate learning networks. So I knew they weren't going to go for the wording and what we call these things. So what I did was I actually I showed this project I did with the class in Turkey. Okay, and I first showed the project. It was 4 year olds learning how to speak English, and they were learning with 4 year olds in Turkey. So I showed them this voice thread project where they're telling stories, they have their drawings, and then they see the production, what can happen, the possibilities, and then once there's you show the possibilities, then you get them excited about it, and so then comes the how did this happen, and then I say, okay, well, the way that it happened is because I'm able to connect with other educators through different places, like Twitter or social media as Facebook, and just different forums, blogs. And I say, well, why don't we talk to one of these educators, and they'll explain to you how we have been working throughout the year in the classroom to get the students like this. And once they see the technology, their minds are blown. Well, at least that's been my experience. And my director was blown away, and now he even has our city in Germany. He's asking all the schools to come and for us to show them how to connect. So
Okay, great. Congratulations. So you've convinced your director and you're introducing this. What do you tell students, and if any different, what do you tell teachers about how do you go about building your own personal network?
I asked them to pick one tool first. Usually, blogs. Quickly introduce them to blogs. Show how to participate. Usually, we start first in by commenting, and then I usually tell a person ahead of time whatever the subject matter is. So for me, it's English language teaching. I'll ask one of my friends who does the English language teaching blog, and I'll say, okay, well, we're going to comment on your blog. This is an interesting topic for the educators. And then they'll see how that interaction occurs, how there's like a response, and then how the conversation evolves from there. And then I ask them to, after they get comfortable with this, to begin looking at other tools. Now, just like our students, we all advance at different levels. Some of us, some teachers the next day, they're going to be on Twitter, they're going to be on Facebook. And I actually have a wiki set up that gives a step-by-step process for each of these. There's 6 steps, so that way you can get on Twitter easily. There's, 6 steps so you can find educators on Facebook. There's 6 steps so that way whatever tool they're most comfortable with and they choose, they will know who the people are to connect with in their field specifically.
How do you grow it? So once you've connected, do you continue to add to it?
Yes, that would be my advice. Is that part of the network is that it's a community, and the way you build community is you have to participate. Just as others bring their knowledge to the table, you bring your knowledge and experience. And one thing that I do find from educators is sometimes they don't believe that their ideas are worthy, but they are. There's always somebody, whether it be a new teacher or it be a teacher in another part of the world, who has not heard what they have accomplished in their classroom before. There's always a different perspective, and as long as we keep sharing, we don't have to come up with the most novel idea but something we're passionate about. Every teacher does something that they're really great at. Maybe they do an assignment that's really great. Maybe they do discovery learning that's really great. Maybe they work with special education students and they're really great at it. If they share these experiences, then they really get to experience the personal learning network, because then they see when people say, thank you, this really helped me, this is how I applied it in my classroom, or this is how my students were enriched by it.
So it sounds to me like your network is global. and that you do a fair
Yes.
amount of connecting teachers and students globally. Any advice on why and how to do that?
Yes. Personal learning networks are about a conversation. Stephen Hargadon said this in a recent webinar I attended of his, and he's very right. It's an open conversation, and as long as you're contributing and you're listening, then it can continue this conversation. And so if you're constantly talking to people, if you select some, if you say, wow, um, this really helped me, or I really want to connect with people in I really want to connect with you, you're in another part of the world. I want my students to learn about the culture. I want them to be able to know intercultural communication. Can you help me with this? It's basically asking for help, just what we ask our students to do every day, is to open the conversation, be willing to listen, be willing to let it take you where it's going to take you, because often it takes you in a complete different place than you originally imagined. And that's what my advice would be. Just be very open and continue to keep participating in this conversation.
How do you find teachers and classrooms in other parts of the world that to connect with?
I find the easiest forum that I find is Twitter, because as soon as you get on Twitter, as soon as you meet somebody who has more followers, you can ask them. I have had many people with who come on and they're new and they say, okay, well, I'm really interested in this. How do I connect? And so I say, okay, well, just tell me what you want to do. I'll tweet this, and of course, all my followers will see this, and then they'll connect with others. And this is how you begin. You just start looking and searching. There are many different. Even if you do a Google search on Twitter for educators, you'll immediately come across a wiki, and this wiki has Twitter's educators that are Twitterers, and it also has it divided by subject level. So you can find math teachers, or you can find even principals, administrators. So you can find those that are in your field.